Ashika Island is coming out tomorrow. It is going to be insane for Warzone 2. Rebirth Island is officially coming back, and I want to hook you guys up with some incredible top 5 loadouts for Warzone 2. So we're going to start out with the Cast-Off 762 because this weapon is actually amazing for beginners that want to get high damage and low recoil. So we're going to start out with the Polar Fire S. The Polar Fire S helps with sound suppression, bullet velocity, damage range, and recoil smoothness at the cost of aim down sight speed and aiming stability. Now, I maxed out the bullet velocity and increased the recoil smoothness by 0.72 ounces. Then we moved on to the Cast 10 584mm barrel. Increased the damage range by 0.28 inches and the recoil steadiness by 0.26 pounds. This helps damage range, bullet velocity, hipfire accuracy, and recoil control at the cost of aim down sight speed, hip recoil control, and movement speed. I put on the AimOp V4. This thing is literally a cheat code. This thing right here, incredible. So little recoil. It's just fantastic. Make sure you have the eye positions at the far maxed out. And I put on the Demo X2 grip for the increased recoil control. I increased the aiming out stability by 0.15 inches and the recoil steadiness by 0.29 ounces. And then I put on the 40 round mag. If you want to put on the 20, that's up to you, but I really don't recommend it. I think the 40 is actually fantastic for this weapon. And to show you guys how incredible this weapon is, check this out. Such little recoil and such heavy damage, you're going to have a fantastic time actually using this weapon. This thing absolutely shines close range, which is actually insane, but the fact that it still does really well long range without bouncing too much, this build is absolutely optimal for a beginner or even an experienced player that just wants to have a little advantage on the field. Number 4, we're going with the TAC 56. This thing has, as it says, no recoil, and I know you guys are going to enjoy this build. So I put on the Harbinger D20, and it helps with sound suppression, bullet velocity, damage range, and recoil smoothness at the cost of aim down sight speed, aiming stability, and aim walking speed. I increased the bullet velocity by 0.81 inches and the recoil smoothness by 0.54 ounces. Moved on to the 17.5 Tundra Pro Barrel. This helps with damage range, hip fire accuracy, and bullet velocity at the cost of aim down sight speed and hip recoil control. I maxed out the damage range and increased the recoil steadiness by 0.35 pounds. Put on the FSS Combat Grip. This helps with recoil control at the cost of aiming stability. And I increased the aiming out stability by 0.35 inches and the recoil steadiness by 0.55 ounces. Put on the 60 round mag, but if you want it 40, it's completely up to you. This will give you more mobility overall. And I put on the 5.56 high velocity rounds. I maxed out the bullet velocity and increased the damage range by 0.61 Gs. As you guys see, it reduces the damage range, so I wanted to make sure it's increased to make sure it's balanced out. And show you guys how amazing this thing is. Check this out. Zero recoil, absolutely optimal for somebody that just wants to use the iron sight. This thing does plenty of damage. And the beautiful thing is, on Warzone 2, you don't need an optic. You can actually use the regular iron sight and do an amazing job considering how nice this sight is. I just don't know why you wouldn't use it. No recoil, clean sight, go-to weapon to use. Next, we're moving on to the RPK, and this is something that a lot of people tend to gravitate towards just because it's the easiest weapon to use. That's why I threw it on there. Polar Fire S for the first attachment, it's the muzzle, and this helps with sound suppression, bullet velocity, damage range, and recoil smoothness at the cost of aim down sight speed and aiming stability. I increased the bullet velocity by 0.32 inches and the recoil smoothness by 0.32 ounces. Now, here's the thing. After these points, I don't really think they're necessary to move any further. I think they're actually very good right here. I also put on the TAC 597 barrel. Increases damage range, hip fire accuracy, movement speed, and bullet velocity at the cost of hip recoil control and aim down sight speed control with a little bit of recoil reduction, but you're not going to really notice that. I increased the damage range by 0.26 inches and the recoil steadiness by 0.27 pounds. Keep it around that range, you'll be good to go. I also put on the secret weapon, which is the AimOp V4. Increased the eye position maxed out to the far range. And then I put on the Demo X2 grip for recoil control. Increased the recoil steadiness by 0.74 ounces. And last but not least, I put on the high velocity rounds, 7.62. Now, I increased the bullet velocity maxed out and damage range by 0.43 Gs, just because you guys see that damage range does get decreased with this round. And show you guys the outcome. This thing is absolutely beautiful. Has plenty of bullets, and actually just like the Cast-Off 762, with basically more bullets. Now, the downside is obviously this has less mobility because it is an LMG. But I think that if you want to take out multiple teams and multiple enemies, this would be a fantastic weapon to have, especially in an ideal position. So if say you have the high ground or something like that. Next, we're moving on to my secret weapon, which is the Fennec. This is a must-have close range. It's so incredibly powerful. And even if it does get nerfed, this build right here is just unnerfable. So make sure you are running this. The ZLR 16.5 ignition barrel helps with the damage range, bullet velocity, hip fire accuracy, and recoil control at the cost of aim down sight speed, hip recoil control, and movement speed. I increased the damage range by 0.25 inches and the recoil steadiness by 0.50 pounds. That's put on the VLK Laser 7MW. Helps with aim down sight speed, aiming stability, and sprint to fire speed. The cost of the laser being visible in ADS, so be careful if you use this because your laser is going to be visible. If you don't want that to happen, you can use something along the lines of the 1MW quick fire laser. That way your aim down sight speed is increased and nothing else. Put on the Agile Assault 7 stock for sprint speed, aim walking speed, crouch movement speed, and aim down sight speed. At the cost of aiming stability and recoil control, I increased the aiming out stability to the max amount, and I decreased the weight to negative 2.06 ounces for aim down sight speed, so it's no longer a slow weapon. Put on the Fennec rubber grip. This helps sprint to fire speed and aim down sight speed at the cost of recoil control. I increased the recoil steadiness by 0.42 ounces. And I put on the Fennec Mag 45. I don't suggest the Fennec double tack mod just because it's not really worth it. Just show you guys how amazing this gun is. This thing you would think would have a ton of recoil after all the changes, but this thing literally has 0 recoil. The only recoil is the long range, so be careful. It's going to bounce a little bit, but if you can actually control it, you'll be in good shape. So I would suggest sticking to, the short to medium range. And if you are in long range gunfights, maybe just stick diversifying. You might be better off doing that. But this gun is absolutely a must-have, especially if you're playing Warzone 2. Now remember, when we get to Ashika Island, this thing is going to be what basically everybody uses, except people aren't going to have the right build for it. Meanwhile, you're going to have the correct build that is unnerfable and do a whole lot of damage. Please use this one in particular. The #1 weapon in Warzone 2 right now is the TAC-V, and trust me, this is the one you're going to want to use. I have the Custovia DX90, increases sound suppression, bullet velocity, recoil smoothness, and recoil control at the cost of aim down sight speed, aim walking speed, and aiming stability. I increased the bullet velocity by 0.84 inches and the recoil smoothness by 0.90 ounces. Put on the 18-inch precision 6 barrel, helps with the damage range, hip fire accuracy, and bullet velocity at the cost of aim down sight speed and hip recoil control. I maxed out the damage range and increased the recoil steadiness by 0.39 pounds. Put on the secret scope, which is the Aim Op V4, max out the far range. Put on the 50-round drum. If you want to use the 30, it's completely up to you, but I just think you're better off with the 50 to get more shots and multiple enemies. This does hit really hard, though, so, I mean, whichever one you want to use, it's not going to do bad either way. And then the F-Tac Ripper 56. The F-Tac Ripper 56 is incredible for aiming out of stability, hipfire accuracy, and recoil stabilization at the cost of aim down sight speed and walking speed. Now, I increased the aiming out of stability by 0.23 inches and the recoil stabilization by 0.80 ounces. Product, absolutely incredible. They're not going to be able to nerf this. Like, this could not be nerfed. This is meant to actually be an incredible weapon. The trade-off is meant to be the recoil. So the thing that's beautiful about this weapon is this is supposed to be a high recoil, high damage weapon. And so if they were to nerf this, they would actually completely make this weapon useless. They can't make it completely useless. So this build right here, no matter what they do to the weapon, is actually going to be fantastic, just because it gives you the lowest amount of recoil while retaining the damage. This build is so incredible, and I highly recommend it to anybody, and I mean anybody that wants to be competitive and get the best bang for each bullet.